In any programming language that you use in your project, you might use packages. What are packages? Packages that are codes that other people wrote and you want to use in your project. So your code depends on that package. You need a way to manage all these dependencies. How can we do that in PHP? Well, in PHP, we have Composer. You can download it from composer.org. Here I have Composer on my computer. So if I write Composer version, I will get version 2.1. So now I know that my Composer is installed and it's working properly. So now let's start using it. How to use Composer? All you need to do is to have a composer.json in your project. For example, here, this is my project. I should have a composer.json file, and Composer will take care of all the package management for me inside that file. So let's create one. Here I will create a new file, composer.json. That's it. Inside this file, I will write my data in a JSON format. For example, this is helping me require this package and this package. We use the keyword require, and inside it we use a JSON object, and then we have the first package. In the packages are normally formatted as vendor/package name. So for example, it would be AMIR KAMIZI as the vendor, and the package would be like package name. And then we would have the version 1.0. So now there are two questions that we need to ask ourselves. First, where do I find these packages and their names? And the second question that you might ask is that how do I format these versions that I wouldn't have any problem, I would get the latest packages. So first, let's start by the first question. Where can I find these packages? If you go to packagist.org, you can see all the packages that are there for PHP. You can find the packages you need in Packagist. You search for whatever you want. For example, let's say random number. I want to generate some random number, and it shows me the vendor/package name. This is the full package name, vendor/package name, and this is the description. You can literally copy that manually and add it to your composer.json file like this, composer.json file, copy it here, and then specify the version. For example, I wanted version 1.2. Now that I have written that in my composer.json, how does Composer know to include this package in my project? Well, all I need to do is to write composer update, and it would go through this file and see which files are necessary for Composer to add to my project, and then it will download them and add them to my project. As you can see, I have no other folders here, so let's see what happens. Composer update. It will get all the data, and here if I refresh this, as you can see, it has created a folder vendor. Inside the vendor, I see that folder IRC Maxwell. This is the vendor name, and then inside it we have randomly package, and inside it there are the codes necessary for that package to run correctly. That's amazing. I didn't need to do anything, and now in my code I can use the power of this package and generate random numbers without writing any code myself. I could require this project in my project and then generate random numbers with this rather than creating the functions and algorithms myself. So it's very powerful. Here we have added our package and vendor and version, everything manually, and then used composer update. There is another way which I personally recommend. So now let's delete this whole folder completely and delete this composer.lock that has been created. Great. And let's clear the terminal. let's remove it. The second way to require this package in my project is to use composer, and composer will bring all the data necessary and the versioning, and it would add it to this composer.json file by itself. Now let's see how would we do that. First we write composer, and instead of writing update, we would write require. Now composer is going to require the package that we write here and add it to my composer.json, and then download it and add it to my project. So here the name of the project was IRC Maxel random lib. Even for this command I could write it myself here, IRC Maxel / random lib, or I could go to packages, and when you go to the package page itself, you can see the command here, composer require IRC max or random lib. I could copy this and paste it in my terminal and run this. As you can see, it has updated the file itself. I didn't do anything, and then required the package here for me. Inside the vendor, I can now see IRC Maxwell folder and randomly package, and I can use this package in my project easily and perfectly fine. Now that we have talked about packages and we have seen where we can download them, where we can get access to these packages, and how we can add them to our project, let's talk about the versions. How can we use different versions? How can we specify a version when we require the project, when we require the package? For example, here, as you can see, when I was requiring the package manually and I wrote the name in my file, I said 1.2, but when composer required the package for me, it has added this. What does that mean? So let's see. There are different ways to write the version of your package. For example, let's say I have AMIR KAMIZI. Let's say I have a package and it's called first package, and I want to specify the version that I want to require. There are different ways to do that. For example, I could specify an exact version like 1.3.2, or I could specify a range. For example, I could say I want any version that is greater or equal to 1.3.2. So it would require any version that is above that or equal to 1.2. Or I could do the opposite. I could say, okay, I want the versions that are less than this version. I don't want this version. So Composer would take care of that for me. The other way is to use wildcards. For example, I could say I want 1 point anything. I want 1 point star. It would bring me 1.1 to 1.9. I could say, okay, I want 1.3 point star. Or I could use this one. This one is actually very interesting because it means that do not allow breaking changes. For example, do not bring major version changes, just minor changes. For example, if I write this and 1.3.2, it would give me the versions that are greater or equal to 1.3.2 until the version that is 2.0, but not the 2.0 itself, because that would be a major change in the version number, and Composer will take care of that for me. It would not bring that version, but any version below that would be fine. After that, we could use a Composer update, and Composer will update the version and require this package for us by itself. You could specify the version when you require the package with Composer require as well. For example, here I could say I want Composer require IRC Maxwell random lib, but this version 1.1, and I could write it here, and if I run this project, it would bring me the version for 1.1. As you can see, it has added here. All I needed to do is to add the version after the package name here in my command. Now that we have added these packages to our project, what should we do? How can we use them? Let me delete that and bring the latest version to my project. Let's delete this folder and delete this composer.log, and then clean the terminal and run this command again. Now I have the latest version in my project. Now as you can see inside my project, there is a folder vendor IRC Maxwell, and inside that I can see the package and the latest codes. But now how can I use that in my project? All the packages will be inside this vendor folder, and inside this vendor folder there is an autoload.php file. What is that and how can we use this? And this is just require once the package real, and it will take care of all these packages for me. Do you remember when we talked about include and require? As you can see, all those packages are all in different folders. So if I want to use them, I would be writing like require vendor, and then IRC Maxwell, and then the file itself that I want to use. But Composer takes care of all of that for me. The only file that I need to require is this autoload.php. It doesn't matter if I have required one package or hundreds of packages. PHP Composer will take care of all of it inside that autoload.php file for me, and the only file that I need to require is the autoload.php file. Now I can easily use that code inside my project. So let's see in the documentation that how the code should be used. Now if I go to the same page, I can see that there is a readme. Let me read the documentation. As you can see here, we have to first create a factory and a generator, and from that generator we can generate random numbers. So let's use that. Let's copy this code to our project. And then use this generator to generate some random number. Okay, now let's see if we have done everything correctly. Var dump this random integer and php index.php, and as you can see it has generated 15 for me because I have stated that I want 5 between 5 and 15. If I change it to 100,000 and I run the code again, I would get 87,587. This works fine. I didn't need to write any code. If I could go to this project, I can see that they have written so many functions and codes for this project, for this package, but I don't need to write any code. I could just use this package with like 3 lines of code and run and generate some random numbers perfectly fine. That's the power of packages. And honestly, between all the package managers out there for Python and JavaScript, I think Composer is one of the best. Composer is doing an amazing job managing packages for PHP, and I love it, and it's very powerful. Go through this packages website and find the packages you like, try to use them in your project, and you can see that how easy it is and how clean it is to work with all these packages inside your project. This is the end of this part. Now let's go to the next section.